Okay, so welcome everybody. So today we're going to be hearing from Frances Boylan from DIT. So Frances has real expertise in this area, and she runs a very successful initiative called the 12 Apps of Christmas every December, where they basically kind of provide educators with 12 apps which people can use to improve their teaching or learning or just their kind of general everyday practice. So yeah, without further ado, Frances, whenever you're ready, you can work away.
Lovely, thank you, Darrell. Hopefully you can all hear me clearly there enough. Yes, e-learning development officer will be my role here in DIT. So we have a learning, teaching and technology centre, and there's a number of us working here, and 5 of us in particular focus particularly on e-learning, blended learning, development of online learning opportunities and so on and so forth. So we would support staff in their efforts to design, create, develop, implement anything in the e-learning spectrum, if you like. I would also lecture on the MSc in Applied Learning and the MA in Learning and Teaching and other CPD modules and that around the area, around technology enhanced learning, blended learning, and I would supervise master's students and have a PhD student as well. So that's just a little bit about me and where I come from. So what I'm going to do for about 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to give you your 8 minutes to give you a quick overview of kind of mobile learning, just so you can, for those of you where this might be a new area to you, to give you a sense of kind of the context within which my work happens, if you like. And then I'll move on, just explain a little bit around the 12 apps and other projects on mobile learning end that I've been involved in, and then leave it open for a few minutes for some questions and answers at the end if any questions arise there. So hopefully you can see these slides okay. This is just a definition of mobile learning that I particularly like, and I've come across, there's many of them out there, but of all the ones I've come across, this is the one for me that works the best. And why is because it has these words here: to facilitate, support, enhance and extend the reach of teaching and learning. So this definition really is all about the teaching and learning end of it. It's not focusing on the tool or the technology, and a lot of the definition of mobile learning they do tend to focus on the technology, because I particularly like this one. So really mobile learning can be about the integration of technologies or applications. It can be using your iPad in the classroom, projecting it onto the wall so that you can interact with and manipulate slides during a lecture, hand the iPad out to students so they can, put stuff on the slides or fill in questions, answers, draw, I don't know, molecules, whatever. But so too, it can also be using a polling app or an audience response app in class to gather and display opinions as well. So really it's any practice that exploits handheld technologies, that relies on Wi-Fi or a mobile network during that practice, the aim of which is kind of teaching and learning. So it's really what it's all about. So it can be anything. It can happen in the classroom, it can happen outside the classroom, it can be something the educator does just in the classroom, or it can be something that just the student does. It can be something the educator asks the students to engage in. It can be set, prescribed, it can be structured, or anything that facilitates just-in-time learning. And really, mobile learning or M-learning, it's an aspect of your e-learning approach. You wouldn't go and design an M-learning course, but you might have M-learning elements within your e-learning course. And if you look at the literature, these are all of the benefits that research has found mobile learning has. So it's all the same benefits as e-learning, but it has these added ones of convenience, how it's so flexible. Now, the one about the different learning styles was there's a debate at the minute as to whether learning styles, people, whether it is a hot topic anymore or not, whether people actually believe it or not. But the literature to date says it accommodates different learning styles. It certainly facilitates communication, collaboration. It does increase engagement levels. Although having said that, people who use it, a lot of their students would say that if they overuse it, it has the opposite effect. Students get fed up with it a little bit if it's overused too much. So you really need to decide where it fits in and where it's going to add value. And if it's not going to add additional value, then maybe you should just look at what your traditional approach is and see which would be better to stick with. It does certainly allow for easy evidence collection of evidence, and I read a lovely case study recently about this where kind of secondary school students were sent out into their community, and they were looking at issues around, say, disability and access. And they came back with photographs and audio, video and everything around, say, cars parked in wheelchair spaces without the appropriate cards to display, or public library that had only steps up to the front and had no wheelchair access. So things like that, and it allowed them to bring all that back into the classroom, something that they wouldn't have been able to do without these devices in their pockets, really. It wouldn't have been as handy to share and put stuff together as it would have been, it's handier now than it would have been to date. The mobility aspect relates to both the mobile technology itself, that it is mobile, but also the fact that the learner is mobile. So your students do not have to be in front of you. They can be out and about doing things as well. So that's just a quick overview of the benefits of it. I came across this recently. These are the three kind of legs of the stool, if you like, in terms of support that staff and students need if mobile learning is to be successful. So they need technical support, logistical support, and pedagogical support as well. So it's a good idea to keep these three in mind. And I have these two references here. The first guys there, they undertook a study exploring student mobile learning practices at their own university. It was in the States. And they discovered that there was a gap between the number of students who own mobile devices and those who use them for academic purposes. And those who did use them for academic purposes do so mostly outside of the classroom with limited guidance from their educators. I thought that was really, really interesting. Now, I know it's 2013, but I could put my hand up and safely say that that's the way it is here a lot as well. Students are only using these if their lecturers are using them within class with them and giving them guidance on how to use them for learning, if you like. The second piece of research there, they disagreed slightly with the first guys, and they found that some of their students were actually using for academic purposes, but agreed that in-class use was still uncommon, and that students were more likely to apply mobile devices to academics when instructors encouraged their use in class. So it's a lot around the encouragement of students for using these for learning and teaching them how to use them for learning as well. It's not just the staff that need technical or pedagogical support, the students need it as well. So that was an interesting one there. This is one model to keep your eyes on if you are implementing any technology into your learning, teaching and assessment practices, and in particular mobile technologies, to think of, if what you're thinking of doing is only substituting one tool for another tool and it's not actually adding any value to the activity, then really is there any value doing it? And you would argue that maybe you should just stick with your current practices. So where you need to be moving is up into the augmentation and particularly into the modification part of this model. So using mobile learning to actually improve the experience of the student. And very few of us will reach redefinition, I suppose, that you may end up doing getting modules revalidation and things like that if you are completely changing the nature of the assessment or the nature of the activities that take place in a module. But when you think about what mobile devices can allow you to do, say the whole social aspect, the whole sharing aspect, the whole bringing in gurus in the field, virtually into your classroom, and how the mobile technology can allow you to do that, you can completely change the value of, the nature of the activities, the learning activities that you might traditionally have set for your class. So things like there's mind mapping apps, for example, that students can collaborate on, and then they could be shared on Twitter or shared in LinkedIn. And if you're sharing something on Twitter, you can tag a person in your field with this and see if they get back to you, see what their views and their opinions are. They may well interact with you. And again, read a lovely case study about this recently of a chemist who had students growing crystals in the lab and decided to explore Twitter and had students tweet pictures of their the crystals that they were growing and to tag chemists in the field with this. And they had a huge response from those in industry watching how their crystals were growing, tweeting back pictures of their own work and their own labs, and that really, really motivated their students. It completely changed how the students that year performed. So things like that, have a little think. If you are going to be integrating technology, you do need to think of how it is you're going to do it, and I particularly like this this table, because if you look on the left there, if you're talking about using technology, it tends to be an add-on. It's used here and there. It's more used for the instructing and content, or it's more used by the instructor to push stuff out and to deliver stuff. Whereas if you're integrating technologies and integrating mobile devices, you've planned it. It's a routine part of your environment. It's engaging your students with the content rather than being used for just pushing the content out. It's getting them to think in a different way, to act in a different way, to encourage higher order thinking skills and so on. Now, I'm quite happy to send these slides to Dara to disseminate. So if you haven't caught the URL or the URL for the image there on the right-hand corner, by all means, you can get it off the slides. Just very quickly, before I move on to explain a little more about the 12 apps, I like this, and I have no reference for it. Maybe I shouldn't really be using it without a reference, but it's a great slide. Here's your hierarchy of needs, and your most basic need is meant to be food, water, shelter, and warmth. But I came across this recently where somebody was arguing that really for students, battery is the first need, Wi-Fi is the second, and then they'll think about food, water, shelter, and warmth. So I suppose if you are going to be integrating mobile technology or learning into your practices, do a quick audit of what devices your students have, because you can't really recommend an app for Apple devices if 90% of your students have Android devices, or if a lot of them have Windows phones. That can bring in its own set of difficulties, trying to find an app that or similar apps that they can all use and that won't affect their experience. Checking Wi-Fi in your timetabled rooms, again, and hope that your students can get onto that Wi-Fi, and that the Wi-Fi is good enough that it will sustain, the number of students that you have in the classroom trying to access it at the same time. Here in DIT, in places, we only have what is termed social Wi-Fi, so it's not good enough for maybe 100 or 150 students in a lecture theatre all trying to get onto a particular Socrative or something like that. Thinking of your class size as well. So Socrative, for example, as mentioned there, it's an audience polling app, so you can throw out quizzes, or you can throw out just random true-false questions where students can vote. That has a limit of sorts in that they don't guarantee that after maybe 60 students or so that the experience will be seamless and flawless for everybody. So you do need to look at the numbers that you have. You can always get students to share a device and think, pair, share kind of approach either. And think of does your institute have a BYOD policy, so bring your own device policy, and how does that support staff and students bringing their own devices and using them for learning as well? So if students are having difficulties accessing or installing a particular app, or it's not working, who do they go to? Is it you, or does the help desk help with that? Because that might influence some of the activities you might do as well if you don't have technical support that the students can turn to there. So a little bit more about me then. It's what I've been doing. Well, I suppose my interest is very new really in the whole area of mobile learning. It started off in the end of 2013. A colleague, Claudia Brude, who now works with PayPal, used to work here with us in the LTTC, and she had started off this mobile learning project, and she'd run it in 2013, but then she was moving out to PayPal, and she did not want the project to die, if you like. So she turned to me one day and she said, "Frances, would you take it on?" And that when it's a completely new area, and it just scares you getting into something new. You think, what if I make a mess of this? And that song, "Everybody's Free to Wear Sunscreen." There's a line in that: do one thing every day that scares you. And this was most definitely a day where I did something that scared me. I eventually said, "Okay, Claudia, yes, I will take this project on." And I ran it then 2014, 2015. We lost staff and stuff in 2016, so there wasn't time, just wasn't availability and time to run it again, unfortunately. It has been a great success, particularly in 2014. They were a really, really interesting group, and a group of 8. And they came with their ideas to the project. They were each given a device, and we used to meet as a group very, very regular to see how everybody was getting on, to brainstorm ideas, help each other technically and pedagogically. And then at the very end, they all presented their projects at the Learning and Teaching Showcase. And it went very, very well. I changed things slightly in 2015 to, people were saying to me, it's really hard to have an idea of a project when I actually don't know much about learning. I'm interested in it, but I actually don't know anything about it. So how do I come with an idea? So we changed it a little bit in 2015, where they came to a series of workshops, or a big workshop first, which taught them a little bit around mobile learning, gave them ideas of the types of projects they could do, then sent them off to pick a project and then submit it and start the project. And it got such a response. There was a much bigger number. It more than doubled the numbers. So there was like 18 to 20 people interested in doing this, and we had 8 the year before. But it actually didn't work with the bigger numbers. It was impossible to get them all together, really hard to get them to work together. They were, as DIT were spread north side and south side over the river, it was really hard to get people to travel over and back to meet. And it just, with the large group, while there was a huge amount of interest in it, it actually wasn't as successful, which was interesting actually, it was an interesting finding, if you like. So in around that time, 2015 or so, or early 2014, one of my master's students happened to be doing her her project around the 10 days of Twitter. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it has the same format as the 12 Apps of Christmas. And she had heard of this guy called Chris Rowell, who's working in a similar role as myself in London. And he was going to take the 10 days of Twitter idea and turn it into the 12 Apps of Christmas and start promoting mobile apps. And it just caught my attention, thought it was a very clever way of doing it. And I emailed Chris, approached him and asked him, would he mind if I did, he was just doing it for his own university, would he mind if I did one here? And he was perfectly happy with that. And we collaborated a bit on apps and so on. And we both ran a 12 Apps of Christmas that year, and we were both signed up to each other's courses and would have shared our knowledge with each other's groups and so on. So the idea is that for 12 weekdays, 12 weekdays, which is actually 16 days, I decided not to run it over the weekend. I thought the numbers would just drop drastically if that was the case. One page on the site is released each day. And for 2 of the years, 2014, 2016, that page was password protected. That kind of heightened the interest, the intrigue of it a little bit, if you like, made it a little bit more fun. And meant that people weren't jumping ahead. They were, each day they were finding out about one app, and the idea was that whatever showed up on that page that day would take them about 10 minutes or so just to read. So they could get a quick sense of what the app was about, how it could be used in the classroom. And I used that SAMR model I showed you earlier, the one that went from substitution up to redefinition. And I tried to take the app and give examples of how, if you use the app in this way, really that's only substitution. If you use it in this way, well, that's actually modifying your activity. And what about doing this to redefine your activities and using this app? And I got an absolutely brilliant response from it. I have to say it was actually the best of the 3 years, I think. The hashtag we used was 12 Apps DIT. It was really busy, got a huge amount of interest there. People were following it and really engaging actually, and sharing ideas and linking up with each other. And there was just a great buzz around those 16 weekdays. Each day there was a short activity as well. So somebody could, if they were actually interested in the app, they could go on to try something out and then submit what they did, take a screenshot and tweet it. And we gamified some of those as well. There was one particular app, Erasma, which is bringing basically flat images on paper or whatever to life. So you have when you mouse over the image, it triggers a video to play on your device. So we had great fun around that one, and there was a few prizes and that given out. So that definitely motivated people. On each of the years, or the 2014, 2015, definitely, I added in a page into the year that was about the pedagogical end of it. So in the first year, we had the SAMR model, all about the SAMR model. And then, as I said, each page, each day was reflected that model in the content. The second year, 2015, it was aimed at both educators and students. So it was all around personalizing learning and showing students what kinds of apps they could integrate into their own learning practices that would allow them to start to personalize content a little bit. And we included 2 pages on the website that year, one about what personalization learning means for the student, to teach them a little bit about it so that the app pages would make more sense as they were going through the project. And we also had a page for educators, so explain to educators how you can kind of create the environment or create the culture amongst your students that will encourage them to use mobile devices and mobile apps in this way to personalize their learning. So we got a great response from that as well. It was like 50-50 educators and students, and the numbers went up each year. Like with 700 the first year, we had that doubled in the second year. Actually, we had just short, more than doubled. We were just short of the 2,000 the second year, and we had around the 3,000 for the third year. And the final year, then last year, we decided to go down the case study route, so just do it a little differently again. And I approached different people, UK, US, and some Irish educators as well, who were using mobile devices and mobile apps in their practice, and asked them to write a short case study on what they were doing, how they were doing it, the benefits of it, what their students thought of it, and to support people that day in the comment section of the site as well, to answer questions and that. So it was a different year. It appealed to a different audience. It did go down quite well, but I think people missed what had been provided in 2014 and 15 around the practical aspect of this is what you can actually do in your classroom with this app in different ways. So it was a different year. The passwords have been taken off each of the sites as the course ended, and the pages have been opened up as open educational resources, and I have left them there. The only thing is, apps change, apps update, and that also it's proving a problem in that I looked back on the 2014 site the other day, and I noticed that one of the videos that I had embedded is no longer available because the app has updated, and my images as a result are a little bit out of date as well because it's showing the old look and feel of the app. There's nothing really I can do about that. I wouldn't have the time in my day job to go back over 3 years of a project and constantly update those apps. So while the app itself might have changed a little bit, but the information, the content, the ideas, the pedagogical support, if you like, is still very, very relevant. So I had to kind of sit in my hands and stand back and say, no, I can't do this. And I put a notice on the sites to say, look, this course is over. This is as it was in 2014, 2015, and it's not been updated as such. I should also reference Trevor Boylan. He's a disability officer, assistive technology officer actually, here in DIT for students who are in the Northside campuses. And he's designed, this is his background. So as you can see, 2014, I designed it. 2015, 2016, he designed it. And he came up with these lovely images and logos and that for the site. So that was a great help. It certainly did improve the look and feel of things when you had a proper designer on your side as well. So really, I suppose, although students do arrive at university comfortable with technology, it doesn't mean that they actually know how to use it effectively for learning purposes. And that's a quote out of a digital, the Times Higher Education, elated by Lucan, L-U-C-K-I-N. It was a GIST sponsored supplement of the Times Higher Education. And she's making this very strong point that students don't necessarily know how to use these technologies effectively either. And that's what the 2015 course really tried to focus on, really tried to help students in that way. All of these 3 sites are archived. I have an archive page, like the link there, it should be on the bottom screen. So it's dit.ie/the 12 Apps of Christmas archive, which is all one phrase there. And it'll bring you to a page from which you can link to all 3 years of the project if you are interested in going back on those and having a look. 2017, and I purposely left the screen blank. I don't think it's going to run in 2017, and that really that's quite sad. But I think there's a massive amount of work that goes into this. It took months of my time. Like it's last year I started in May. It was just after the EdTech conference. I decided, right, I'll do it again in 2016. And I started in May contacting people, getting the case studies written, writing up the templates, getting the site. Trevor was working on the images, and it was just all ready to go the last few days of November. All of the case studies were up. That's a long time. That's a lot of work. The previous year, 2015, myself and Trevor started working on it in June, writing all of the app pages, because the year before I'd left it to October. I'd only heard about it kind of maybe September time. About the idea. That's when I approached Chris Rowell the end of summer, early September. So it was really October when the September rush, which for us is nuts here in September. So it was October now you really could get into it. So I only had October and November to do it, and it nearly killed me. So you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning writing app page 11 and 12, and the participants are already on app page 15. So there was a lot of pressure there. I just don't have that time this year to put into it. There's a lot of other things going on here in the centre this year, and I can't commit to the 12 apps in 2017. So that's a pity. But at the same time, I think initiatives like these do tend to run a course. It was funny watching the dynamics each year between 2014, 15 and 16, the different groups that engaged, and it was changing, and people who had been as into it before had moved on to other things or were now implementing them in their practice. And there was a lot of further education, people who are involved in further education sector were participants in 2016. And while that was great, I suppose my focus as my job is to support people in higher education, first and foremost DIT staff, and then afterwards to extend our knowledge and our expertise and promote DIT to higher education sector outside of that. So for many reasons, I suppose, really, I'm saying it won't run. I don't think it'll run. I'm fairly sure it's not going to run 2017, and I hope that come 1st December, I won't regret that. There are other, if you are interested in it, there are other ones that will be running. No doubt Chris Rowe will run it again in London. They seem to take a centre approach to it, so everybody in the centre is working on it. So no doubt it'll run there. There was one in Canada last year. That last year was its first year, so I'm sure that'll run there too. If any of you happen to be law lecturers, one of my ex master's students who works with the Law Society here in Dublin, he ran one particularly for law lecturers last year in the Law Society, but it was open to others to join as well. But all of the apps were focused to how they could be used in that particular discipline. So that was a really interesting way of to take an actual discipline and focus on that discipline. So there will be loads out there. By all means, follow those, and I'll be certainly following them on Twitter. So half an hour goes really, really quickly. I think I just about have the 2 minutes left there if there are any questions. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully it's given you a sense maybe of mobile learning, where it is, where it's at, the benefits of it, and giving you some links to some resources to maybe whet your appetite a little bit if you are interested in that. If you do want to contact me, if you have any questions that you want to contact me on a one-to-one, by all means, feel free to tweet me or to email me.
That's great. Thanks so much, Frances. And
no problem,
I'd recommend following Frances on Twitter as well, because, like she did with the 12 apps, she's a really good source of kind of cool up and coming stuff and kind of useful tips and tricks.
I've been quiet there recently, actually, now that you say it.
Well, with the 12 apps kind of sadly not running this year, I'm sure there'll be more time to put stuff together.
Exactly. There you go.
Everybody's expecting a lot. Well, we've a question here straight away. Yeah, Thomas?
Frances, you said that in terms of time, actually kind of running the 12 apps. If time was an issue, where would you like to see it go? Where could it go?
It's very hard to hear, Dara. Can you just repeat that one for me?
So, yeah, Thomas was just wondering there, if time is an issue this year, where would you see the 12 apps go? Or if time wasn't an issue, where would you like to see the 12 apps kind of initiative go?
Yeah. I did like the idea that my student came up with by focusing on a particular discipline, and I think there's a lot of appetite out there at the minute for people looking for apps that they can use specifically to help facilitate and engage students in their discipline. And that came up a couple of times in the comment section in 2014, saying, yeah, this is a great app, but I'm looking for something in my area. I don't want to run general polls as such. While it's a great idea, I want something more specific. But there are ways of twisting that around, if you like. There's a lecturer here, Alice Luby, who uses Socrative a lot with her students, and she has started to use it in a way that nobody else that I know of has been using it. She's using it to direct tutorials. So while it's a general app, which can be used in the educational area, she's using it to direct tutorials in accountancy. So essentially she sets up all of she uses the quiz aspect of it. It's self-paced, so the students can move, as the students deal with one particular mathematical computation she puts up there, or a question or query, she's stepping them the whole time through a set of accounts. They can move on at their own pace. So she's using it in a discipline-specific way. And I think that's really, really interesting to look at how people are taking these apps, twisting them, turning them, tweaking them to facilitate what they particularly need and deal with their needs and concerns. So I think that's interesting, and it would have been interesting to follow up on that aspect of it. And that being able to do things like that as well means you have to have a really, really strong professional network to hear about what people are doing And doing the 3 apps for the last 3 years has certainly extended my network a lot. But I think you'd have to invest an awful lot of time and effort into tracking people down, talking, finding out what people are doing. And again, I suppose that would add to the time aspect of it. But I think the 12 apps projects need to change and need to go down routes like that, rather than just being, here are 12 general apps every year and how you could use them. I think people get to the point where they need to do a bit more than that. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to put into it to develop it that little further. Now, there's other projects I'll do, and I suppose they'd probably be more DIT focused, rather than the sector as a whole. Hope that answers it a little bit.
It did, yeah. Thanks very much, Frances.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So Shane had a question there, Frances. Would you kind of identify any standout apps from your experience, or any up and coming ones that really kind of stand out for you?
There's 2 actually. Explain Everything is one of them. I don't know if anyone there has actually used it before or knows of it. It was showcased in 2014, the very first one. It's a whiteboard app, but it has so much in it. It's only a couple of euros. It's literally, the last time when I downloaded it was literally like $1.99, $2.99, something like that. But the functionality that you get in it, people are amazed and saying, God, I spend hundreds on an app or a piece of software like this on my laptop, and you're getting all this functionality in a tiny app for so little. Basically, it allows you to, you can record audio, you can draw on the screen, pull in YouTube videos, do all sorts of stuff on the screen and record a voiceover at the same time. So it's absolutely brilliant for creating short little, 2 or 3 minute tutorials on something that your students are having a problem with. I've also seen it used very effectively for feedback. So you can bring in PDF. You can import a PDF into Explain Everything. And then as you can scroll up through the PDF, and you can use the drawing tools to circle things, create, draw arrows, underline, write words. You can put in a YouTube video on top of it, and at the same time be giving the student audio, feedback as well. You package the whole thing up, save it as an MP4, and send it off to them. So I think that has just huge flexibility and huge possibilities for staff. It could actually speed up the feedback process as well. So there's that one. And then there's one I've only been using myself since January, called Slack. Now, you could come across it, Dari, yourself, but it's a team communication tool, a team management tool, but it can be used very, very well with groups of students. So we used it on there's a TELTA module that we run here, Technology Enhanced Learning, Teaching and Assessment, and it's an online module, credited module, and it runs generally once a year. And getting the students to engage and communicate can be difficult on discussion boards. They're busy lecturers like yourselves. There isn't time to sit down and log into the discussion board oftentimes to post a question or to reply to other people. So we set up Slack, and they all downloaded the app, and we invited them all to our team. And then there's a series of channels you can set up within the team. So you can have one channel that's kind of the social things. You can have another channel that deals with content, another channel that maybe deals with assessment. And they can post any time of the day or night their queries or questions in there and respond to each other. You can add reactions, so you can add like thumbs up, smileys, things like that as well. And it really took off to the point that they actually didn't use Twitter at all during the run of the TELTA module in January. The discussion boards were very quiet, but there was a huge amount of engagement going on within Slack. Now, obviously, there's rules and regulations you have to set up around that, and expectations that they don't expect to get an answer at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night just because they posted a query about the assessment due in, on Monday morning. So there is you do have to set up those maybe class rules and expectations, but as an app, it's really, really cool. And you can bring in you can integrate other tools into Slack as well. So if you're working on shared documents, you can integrate those using other tools. So it's certainly one to look at for communication, yeah.
And just off the back of that, Frances, can I ask, was there any apps for students that really took off? So was there any kind of app in particular that students came back to and said, this really, really made a difference to me?
With the student one in 2015, the students didn't really follow 14 and 16. They followed the 15 because it was aimed at them. And of course, they came back and said Christmas was an atrocious time of the year for them. They were all doing in the middle exams, gearing up for exams in January and so forth. So they tend to engage with the first half of the project more than the second half. But Office Lens was one of the apps that was showcased in the first couple of days. You've got Microsoft Office have their OneNote and all that, but Office Lens can integrate with those. But it uses the camera on your phone, but it's more than just a scanner. It's more than just taking a photograph for a whiteboard. It allows you to manipulate the text after you take the photograph of the whiteboard. So it added that extra layer of functionality for them, and then they could bring in that images into if they were using that. Is it OneNote? Is that the Microsoft?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So you could bring it in there and then can manipulate it further, and they're using other tools. So Office Lens, they kind of said, look, I've been taking photographs of whiteboards for a long time, but this is way better, and it allows us to put out bits of text and so on. So definitely Office Lens is a good one.
Good. And unless anyone has another question, sorry, Shane. Yeah.
No, sorry. Just quote mentioned technology. Have there been any sorts of frameworks for this sorts of work in almost what I mean, I know that the usable thing awareness
I'll try not to butcher that. So Francis, Shane was kind of wondering if, based on your experiences with the 12 apps, is there a particular framework or a particular model in terms of introducing technology or kind of getting people to take up technology for education? Would you have come across anything which would I suppose would help structure that or facilitate that?
I really like the SAMR model. Now I know there are those who hate it, but I think it's really simple. It's easy to understand, and people can clearly see where they sit or where their integration of technology with their students sits on this, because there are only the 4 levels, and they can easily see what's considered enhancement and what's considered transformation. I think where it would have enormous value is if a program team were to take this and as a team evaluate how technology is being integrated at a program level, rather than everyone working away in their own little modules, not really having that bigger view of how technology is being integrated at a program level. Because I think one of the benefits or advantages we tell staff, integrated technology can actually make your life a little bit easier, but it can have the knock-on effect of making the student's life actually busier. If we're all using discussion boards in all of our modules, and a student could be taking, how many modules they take at a time, depending on their program. But say, even if they only had 2 modules at a time, and each of the lecturers were using discussion boards heavily, that's a massive pressure on the students to formulate, proper responses. They'd have to read, include the references, formulate a response, and then submit it, and then maybe have it to respond to 2 or 3 others as well as part of the activity. And without knowing that somebody else is doing exactly the same thing the same week in another module the students are also taking, you can really increase the workload for the students. So I think standing back and doing this at a program level really would be very, very valuable. And this is such an easy model to use. And that's why I always include these 2 screens in any sessions that I do around mobile learning and the integration of mobile technologies and apps, because I think this one really shows the difference really easily. Now I don't know how well you can read it there on the screen, but Dara, I'll email these slides onto you after the session here, and you can just see very easily how technology can be done well or it can be done so badly. It can increase the workload or it can actually make life easier. So I think going between those 2 for beginners is adequate and gives a lot of direction.
That's great.
Does that answer Shane's question?
It does. It answers it very well.
And would you recommend them to follow on Twitter the guru of technology and mobile learning?
Tom was just asking there, Francis, if you recommend anybody to follow on Twitter, someone who'd be a bit of a guru in terms of technology and learning. Apart from yourself, he added.
Judy Brown used to do a lot. She's a retired education technologist in the States, but she had a newsletter that used to kind of aggregate, you know, blog posts and stuff from all over. But I see that it hasn't been spewing anything out since 2017. So she may be gone off the radar a little bit, but she does have a huge amount of materials there banked up, if you like. So if you search for Judy Brown, again, I'll send you, as part of when I send these slides, Dara, I'll include the reference to that and link to that so people can follow it up. After that, there isn't that I've been following. I think it's still new enough in the higher education sector that people are still dabbling a little bit, doing bits and pieces here and there, and may not even be advertising the fact that they are doing it. I think we, in the Tell Tools project, the Tell.me, did we include some apps in there as well, some case studies of what some people are doing? Yeah, and there's a 1 minute CPD. I don't know if that's the actual hashtag, but it's a hashtag around 1 minute CPD, and I'll include that in the email as well, Dara, which every day or so, or we'll send out numerous tweets with just something very quick and short, and some of those will be focusing on mobile learning as well. I think not having BYOD policies maybe in place, you know, good strong ones that support the learning and teaching, as opposed to the, you know, no jailbroken phones allowed in the network. How do we wipe people's iPads from a distance when they leave DIT and they've got, you know, a whole load of exam results on their iPads and things like that, which I think the BYOD policies at the minute tend to focus on, the technical things. I think there needs to be more of a push to get those policies rewritten, or additional appendices to those policies written that focus on the learning and teaching side of students having their own devices. And I think not having that seems to be a barrier for a lot of people, and that certainly came up during the 2016-12 apps, and it comes up in any workshops I run here as well. People can say, well, what do I do if my students have problems, or what do I do if something happens, or, you know, these terms and conditions people agree to every time they install an app, they don't read them, and, you know, they're giving these apps access to a lot of their personal information on their phones, and I'm the one asking them to do it as their educator. They feel uncomfortable there. So I think it's been dabbled with a lot here in Ireland. One of the case studies from in 2016-12 apps was from a US professor, and he actually built his own app and has his students working in there and collaborating, communicating. They were journalism students, and he has them working in there. So have a look at his case studies, because that's quite interesting. And of course, the other 11 case studies from 2016 are people who are actually doing this with their students as well. And if any of them, all of them are open to being contacted at any point around their work. And they might be able to lead you further then to people in your area. If it's if they were working in your discipline area, they could lead you further to people who are doing things in that discipline. So that might be of interest as well.
Great. We're well past time at this stage. So look, all that's left is to say thanks very much, Frances. That was
no problem. My pleasure, Darren.
That was really great. And I you know, even the stuff around the SAMR model and kind of a better kind of way of integrating technology into teaching is really, really useful. So thanks again, Frances.
No problem, my pleasure. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend. Although it's only Tuesday. Thinking of the weekend already. The sun is shining.
Thanks, Frances.
No problem. Thank you. Bye-bye.